The year was 1967. While America's youth filled the streets with protest signs and flower crowns, behind the closed doors of Detroit's automotive empire, Chevrolet engineers were conducting experiments of a different kind. They were building a monster, a compact, high-revving, race-bred monster that would change American motorsport forever. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Chevrolet 302 V8, the forbidden engine that General Motors executives tried desperately to keep out of your hands. You think you know the story of American muscle? You don't know anything until you understand the 302. 5 liters of pure mechanical rebellion crammed into an impossibly small package, designed to do one thing and one thing only: dominate the competition while flying under corporate radar. This wasn't just an engine. This was automotive warfare, industrial espionage, and mechanical genius wrapped in a cast-iron block that screamed to 7,000 RPM when everything else was redlining at 5,500. But here's what they never told you. This engine was never supposed to exist. It violated GM's internal displacement rules. It threatened the hierarchy of power within Chevrolet's own lineup, and it performed too well for comfort. By the time the suits upstairs realized what had happened, it was already too late. The 302 had escaped into the wild, and nothing would ever be the same again. The late 1960s were a battleground in Detroit. Ford, Chrysler, and GM waged a horsepower war with no rules of engagement and only one objective: domination. But there was one battlefield that mattered more than any other: the Trans-Am Racing Series. The rule was simple, yet restrictive. Engines could not exceed 305 cubic inches. Ford already had their 302, but Chevy's smallest V8 was the 327. Something had to be done. What happened next remains shrouded in whispers and corporate shadows. In 1967, a small team of Chevrolet engineers, operating with minimal executive oversight, performed automotive surgery that would make history. They took the 4-inch bore from the 327 and merged it with the short 3-inch stroke from the 283, creating a 302 cubic inch displacement that barely slipped under the Trans-Am regulations. This wasn't just another engine variation. This was rebellion in mechanical form. While GM executives were busy pushing big blocks and family cars, this skunkworks team created a high-revving monster that would find its home in the legendary Z/28 Camaro. For 3 brief years, 1967, 1968, and 1969, this engine existed officially, but unofficially, the 302 represented everything Detroit feared. An engine built not for profits or market share, but for pure, unadulterated performance. What makes the Chevy 302 more than just another small block? The specifications read like classified military documents that were never meant for public eyes. Start with that perfect combination: a 4.00-inch bore from the 327, married to the short 3.00-inch stroke from the 283. This wasn't just engineering convenience, it was calculated brilliance. The result? An engine with a mind-boggling 1.33-to-1 bore-to-stroke ratio, practically square by Detroit standards and perfect for high RPM operation. While other V8s of the era were gasping for breath at 5,500 RPM, the 302 was just hitting its stride, screaming all the way to 7,000 RPM and beyond. The factory conservatively rated it at 290 horsepower, but insiders knew the truth. 350 to 375 horsepower was lurking inside these blocks, waiting to be unleashed. Look deeper, and you'll find forged steel crankshafts, forged pistons, solid lifter camshafts with 0.485-inch lift and 11-to-1 compression ratios. The Holley R405 3-carburetor delivered fuel with military precision. The exhaust note from those cast-iron manifolds wasn't just sound, it was a declaration of war. But here's what they didn't want you to see. Every component was deliberately overbuilt, as if the engineers knew this engine would be pushed far beyond its official limits. Coincidence? I think not. And the deception runs even deeper. The specialized high-rise aluminum intake manifold featured enlarged runners and a unique plenum design that reportedly came from Chevrolet's experimental racing program. The double-hump cylinder heads with their 2.02-inch intake valves weren't just production items. They were derived directly from designs tested at Daytona and Sebring. Most revealing of all were the connecting rods, identical in specification to those used in the L8842-7 racing engines. These shot-peened, magnafluxed components could withstand forces far beyond what a modest 290 horsepower engine should ever produce. Engineers even incorporated secret oil passages and enhanced bearing surfaces that wouldn't appear in regular production blocks until years later. This wasn't just an engine. It was a racing prototype disguised as a production option. Why did Chevrolet kill the 302 after just 3 short years? The official story cites changing emissions, regulations, and shifting market demands. But those who know the truth understand that the 302 was silenced for committing the ultimate corporate sin. It was too good for its own good. Consider the evidence. The 302 was making the big block engines, the crown jewels of GM's performance lineup, look increasingly unnecessary. Why would customers pay premium dollars for a 396 when a properly tuned 302 could deliver similar real-world performance with better handling and lower weight? The profit margin simply didn't align with corporate strategy. Internal memos, now buried in GM archives, reportedly show executives' growing concern about the Z/28 problem. The solution? Restricted production numbers, limited marketing, and ultimately, termination. By 1970, the 302 was gone, replaced by more docile, emissions-friendly options that wouldn't threaten the corporate hierarchy. Most telling of all, when racers and performance enthusiasts begged for the 302's continued production, even in limited numbers for competition use, they were met with closed doors and corporate silence. The message was clear. The revolution would not be horsepower rated. The 302 knew too much, could do too much, and had to be contained before it changed everything forever. The true measure of the Chevy 302's greatness wasn't found on paper. It was written in rubber on racetracks across America. In 1968 and 1969, the 302-powered Camaro Z/28 didn't just compete in the Trans-Am series, it dominated it. When legendary driver Mark Donohue piloted the Sunoco Blue Z/28 for Roger Penske's team, he transformed this corporate experiment into a dynasty. The statistics tell a story GM executives couldn't suppress: 10 victories in the 1969 season alone. The 302 didn't just win races, it broke spirits. Pit crews for Ford, Dodge, and AMC watched in disbelief as these engines sustained 7,000 RPM lap after punishing lap. While competitors' engines required constant rebuilds, the 302 seemed almost indestructible when properly prepared. What made this success even more remarkable was the competition. This wasn't victory against underfunded teams or outdated technology. This was triumph over Ford's Boss 302, Dodge's 340, and AMC's best efforts. Each manufacturer brought their engineering might to bear, and each fell before the screaming small block from Chevrolet. Perhaps most telling was the engine's versatility. While designed for road racing, 302-powered cars found success in drag racing, hill climbs, and even endurance events. This wasn't just a one-trick pony. It was an all-conquering thoroughbred that made winners out of drivers who could harness its high RPM power band. Today, the Chevy 302 doesn't just represent horsepower. It represents forbidden fruit that commands astronomical prices. Original numbers. Matching 302 engines have become the holy grail of muscle car collecting, with complete Z28s regularly fetching $150,000 to $250,000 at auction. For rare COPO or special order variants, the sky's the limit. What drives this valuation insanity? Rarity, yes. Only about 20,000 Z28s with the 302 were ever produced. But the true value lies in what these engines represent. The last pure expression of performance before emissions controls and corporate conservatism changed everything. Every casting number, every date code tells a story of automotive rebellion that collectors are desperate to own. The irony is palpable. The very engine GM allegedly tried to suppress has become one of their most valuable creations. Original components, those solid lifter camshafts, forged cranks, and specialized carburetors, now trade for prices that would shock the engineers who designed them. A complete NOS, new old stock, 302 intake manifold alone can command $5,000 from the right buyer. Most telling is the authentication industry that has sprung up around these engines. Experts now use metallurgical analysis, microscopic casting mark examination, and historical documentation to separate genuine 302 components from later reproductions. In the shadowy world of high-end muscle car collecting, the 302's DNA has become more closely scrutinized than evidence at a crime scene. Though officially extinct for over 5 decades, the Chevy 302's engineering DNA flows through performance engines to this day. Like a mechanical phantom, its influence appears in places both obvious and unexpected across the automotive landscape. Look at today's LS small blocks with their over-square designs and high-revving capabilities. The fingerprints of the 302 are unmistakable. When GM engineers developed the 5.5-liter LS in the C6 Z06 Corvette, an engine that could sustain 7,000 RPM in a production car, they weren't creating something new. They were channeling something remembered. The 302's legacy extends beyond GM Ford's Coyote engines. Dodge's modern Hemis all embrace the fundamental lessons of the 302: lightweight rotating assemblies, optimal bore-to-stroke ratios, and flow-optimized cylinder heads. These weren't just good ideas in 1967. They're essential principles today. Most significantly, the 302 created a template for what enthusiasts demand: engines that deliver more than their specifications suggest. Modern manufacturers now routinely underrate horsepower figures, knowing that discerning buyers appreciate discovering their engines deliver more than promised, exactly as the 302 did decades ago. Underground racing communities still build modern 302 variants, using contemporary components to create engines that honor the original while exceeding its performance. These aren't replicas, they're spiritual successors, keeping alive an approach to engineering that values passion over paperwork and performance over politics. The Chevrolet 302 V8 represents more than just another chapter in automotive history. It's evidence of what happens when engineering brilliance escapes corporate constraint. For 3 brief years, this engine showed us what was possible when performance trumped politics and passion overcame profit margins. Today, original 302s still scream on vintage racing circuits and command respect at car shows nationwide. Each surviving example carries with it a question that haunts automotive historians. What if? What if GM had continued development? What if emissions regulations hadn't changed the game? What if the suits had embraced this mechanical marvel instead of reportedly fearing its potential? The truth about the 302 was never written in press releases or marketing materials. It was written in tire rubber on racetracks, in the grins of Z28 owners as they outran bigger engines, and in the whispered conversations of engineers who knew they'd created something special. Something that transcended corporate boundaries. As you consider the legacy of this remarkable engine, remember that sometimes the most important stories in automotive history are the ones that were never meant to be told. The 302 wasn't just an engine, it was automotive rebellion, cast in iron and forged in steel. If you've enjoyed uncovering this automotive conspiracy with me, hit that subscribe button now. Next week, we'll expose the shocking truth behind the Mopar 6-pack system that Chrysler executives reportedly tried to keep off public roads. The muscle car wars had more secrets than you ever imagined, and I'm just getting started.